We just put a new addition on the sheep barn in order to provide more living space for our flock of Shetland sheep. In addition to sharing footage from the build, I thought I would show you how we house our sheep and some of the barn details that we implemented which allow us to care for them as safely and efficiently as possible. My name is Jennifer Johnson. I'm with Whispering Pines Farm. My husband and I raise a beautiful flock of soft Shetland sheep right here on the farm in western New York. This channel is all about raising sheep for their wool. So you're going to find videos here about farm life, about taking care of the sheep, and spinning their wool into yarn. I'll be showing you the three parts of our existing barn, which were built at different times as our flock has grown over the years. I'll show you how all the design details, including the layout, gates, pens, doors, windows, and storage spaces, have created a safe and comfortable environment for raising sheep. Then I will show you the footage from the 2-day build of the new addition. This year we embarked on a project to expand the capacity of the barn with a addition, and wanted to just have some flexibility if we needed more space for storage or for lambing pens or just extra living space. It's really important that sheep aren't crowded in a space where they live. It's very stressful for them, just like with humans. We don't really want to spend all our time crowded with a lot of people. And also, obviously it makes it a lot easier to spread diseases. So it's just not a healthy environment for the sheep. So we decided that we were going to make more living space for the sheep by expanding the barn. So the current barn, we've roughly got about 1,200 square feet of floor space. And the center section has got another 500 square feet in the loft area, which is where we store hay and straw. So the north-facing side of the barn is the human entrance, and then the south-facing side of the barn is the sheep's, where they enter and exit the barn. The center section, that's the section that has the peak, because we built the barn in 3 phases. So the center section, which has the peak and the loft, has got sliding doors on both the north and the south side. And we built that center section, I think it was 2005 when we built the house, because when we moved here, we had a flock. So we had to have a barn. We actually built the barn first. And then, so we wanted to have, we kind of learned from our mistakes where we were before. We had a smaller bit of property, but we were able to kind of learn some things that we wanted to have that we implemented in the new barn. So those north and south facing sliding doors they allow us to bring the tractor through. So if we ever need to get the tractor out into the pastures, that's one way for us to access the pastures. So that south sliding door in the center section, that's really the only way right now the sheep have to get out onto the pastures. And then once they get out of the barn, we've got a good variety of lanes and chutes and gates to route them to all of the different pastures that we've got enclosed, so that it allows for a good pasture rotation, which is important for sheep health, because one of the biggest threats to them is parasites. So they pick up parasites in the pasture. So you want to rotate them, and what rotate means is move them. So in the summer when they're on pasture, we'll move them every, 3. It depends on the size of the pasture. Some pastures, they can get through them in like 3 days. Other pastures are larger and takes them a little bit longer to get all the feed depleted. So in the loft area, like I said, that's where we store the hay and our straw. And that also has 2 sliding doors facing north and facing south. And the north facing sliding door is where I'll throw down the hay or the straw. And I normally use that feed when it's winter and the weather is kind of terrible, just because it's easier for me to get to it versus having to bring it over from the hay storage barn, the larger barn where we store the hay. And that north sliding door is also how we get the hay up into the barn. So we have a hay elevator, and that's what we use to get the hay up there. I don't really use the south sliding doors in the loft for anything other than getting video footage of the sheep out there, because it's a cool angle. So the center section, a couple other details to share with you. The center section was built with two pens, two separate, 4x4 or 5x5 pens. And we use those for lambing, or if we need to quarantine a sheep for any reason, we'll use them for storing things. Like right now I've got one of them is full of my handling equipment. And we'll store hay in there. So they've got a lot of different purposes. And the other thing that we did, learning from our past experience with the barn, is we created I call it the lobby area. So you walk into the barn and you're not walking right into where the sheep live. You actually walk into this little space, which is really nice. It just, you don't have to worry about the sheep getting out if you open the door or whatever. So really good use of the space there to have that little lobby area. I'll also use that, like right now I'm using it. I'll throw down a few bales of hay so I don't have to do it every time I go out to feed them, and then I'll just stack them in that lobby area. The sheep have figured that out though, so now they bang the door and get it to rebound off of the post and they can sneak into the lobby and get a little free snack. But anyway, and then also in that section is our hydrant, the water source. So we've got water lines coming into the barn, so we're not carrying buckets from the house. And so that's really nice. And another thing about the hydrant, because where we live, temperatures can get really cold below freezing, we do have an insulated pad, it's electrified actually, that goes around that hydrant and keeps it from freezing, because it will freeze and destroy the hydrant and you have to replace it. So that's where I get the water buckets filled, and also I have a couple of garbage cans that we use to store minerals, the loose minerals that we use, as well as grain if we're graining them for any reason. And then there's a nice set of stairs that takes you up to the loft. So the first expansion we did after we moved in was a few years later after we moved in, and the flock just kept growing. So that was, we call it the west wing. So that has two sliding doors, front, north and south, to access the barn. There's no lobby area there, so we don't really use that door all that often. The only time I use the north facing door is when I push the sheep over to the other side, close the gate so that the west wing is kind of separate, so they can't get in there. Then I'll open up those doors if I'm cleaning that section of the barn. We'll also access the north side of that section to build lambing pens, but it's always we put a gate in between the west wing and the center section where there's that opening there. So it gives us a lot of flexibility for moving the sheep around if we want to work with them, or clear out a side, make it empty so we can do things like shearing day, for example. That west wing, we close that gate, the shearer sets up there, and we kind of use that whole west wing just for a workspace, and then let the sheep in and out as we need to for shearing them. So the gate there gives us a lot of options, the gate that we have in between the center section and the west wing. The west wing also has two stalls, smaller stalls that we use for lambing, for storage. Again, right now they're sitting empty. We always try to, after we're done using them for lambing, or if we use them for quarantining, we always try to clean them out, because just good health practice. That's also, those two stalls are handy on shearing day, because we got to get the rams inside the barn the night before shearing so that they're not wet, because the rams live outside. So we'll bring the rams into the barn, into those two west wing stalls, and then I put all the ewes on the center and the east wing. So shearing eve, that west wing is empty. There's two windows on the west wing that are facing west, and the windows are important because you need ventilation in the barn so you don't have condensation. It doesn't get too hot in the summer or too cold in the winter, so you can close the windows in the winter, which I don't usually do. We have them installed higher than a standard window, and that's because the lambs will try and jump up and look out the window, and they could break the glass. So we make sure that the windows are high enough that the sheep can't get at the windows. I think everything with these guys. So we do keep a fan in one of those windows, like I said, because we want to keep the air circulating. And the other window has like a plywood curtain over it, because what was happening, we were storing our hay on that side where that window is, and the hay was getting bleached, which isn't good. It loses a lot of nutritional value, I guess. So Rich put a little blocker there, and it just stayed there. We've never removed it. It doesn't really hurt anything. Never remember my east from my west. I'm the west side of the barn. So there's the entrance and exit that the sheep take normally to get onto the pasture. The next addition that we did was the east wing. The east wing has a man door, so you can open the door like a door and walk in and out. And it also has an overhead door. So we installed the overhead door just as to give us some other options. It is kind of nice to have that type of access. A lot of, whenever we buy bags, like a skid load of grain or minerals, to save some money, because you get a discount on like 24 bags, I think. You know, opening the man door, the gates, you don't have to come up, you don't have to have like a space for the gates to clear, so you can have a wider door for that overhead door. Open that up, put the minerals or grain bags in there, close it up and lock it. And it's just nice to have that option. That east wing has a lobby section in the front where we store rakes and pitchforks and stuff. My scale is in there. We store the bags of minerals. There's a little bit of equipment that I store in there. And then for the rams, when I'm feeding them hay, because we don't have enough rams for them to have a whole bale all at once, so I'll keep the bale there and pull off flakes of it as I feed the rams. It usually takes like 3 days to go through one of those bales. On the east wing, the little divider that creates that lobby area has a door, a gate, swinging gate, so we can access that section. There's 2 windows on the east wing with a fan. And the east wing has a gate that I can opt to close if I need to separate off the east wing. So for example, with the AIUs, when I wanted to quarantine them and keep them away from the balance of the flock so that I could grain them more easily and just make sure that they were getting enough nutrition during those early days, I just kept them on the east wing, closed the gate so they were separated from the balance of the flock. So we designed in a lot of little details with those 3 wings, and it's pretty optimal. I mean, there really isn't anything that I want to be able to do in the barn the way we have it set up right now with the sheep that I can't do. So I think we did a pretty good job thinking through the details as we put on these additions. The lobby area is also where the kittens lived before they took over the house. Yeah, that's where their mother brought them eventually. I think probably because there was a pile of straw there, loose straw and stuff, and it was just kind of a nice warm space for the kittens. So that's where we fell in love. That front lobby, the other thing too about that one year, we had 3 ewes that we bred. We brought them into the farm like in December and decided to breed them. And we didn't really have a space for them. I don't know, it was just kind of strange at lambing time because they were so far behind everybody else. So we actually were able to turn that lobby area into a lambing area, and then we could separate it off after they had their lambs. We installed the camera in there and everything, and it worked out really good. So yeah, so those gates that separate the east and the west wing are really handy. Right now the flock is big enough that if I close them into the center section, all of them as a group, I think I have like 60 of them right now, maybe a little more. But if I can get them all in the center section, they're so crowded in there that I can really easily just grab them, do whatever I need to do. So there's no chasing or anything like that because it's like a thick cluster of sheep. So that's a nice setup right there. Now the only thing about those gates is you really, when you're not using them and they're open, they need to be as close to the wall. So there's always going to be like a little angle, right? It's going to form a triangle with a long, whatever that section is of a triangle, the longer section.
I believe the word you are looking for is hypotenuse.
But at the end of that, it's really got to be latched very snugly to whatever it is you've got set there, whether it's a pole or a hook or whatever, because lambs can get in that little slot between the gate and the wall. And, a couple things. Number one, they'll get really stressed out. They could get agitated and get caught up in the gate. Other sheep could maybe smash into them because they see them as vulnerable. It's just very risky. So make sure that if you do have a gate system in your barn, that when you're not using the gate and it's open, that it's nice and tight, flush up against the wall. So then when we were thinking about this next expansion, it's about, we wanted to have, we just wanted to have more space for living quarters. So we didn't put a loft in there, and we did make sure that it was obviously adjoining the current barn. So we were going to build stalls in the barn, have them like each side of rows and rows of stalls, but then decided not to do that because we figured it would limit our options. So what we did do, and I'm not sure if this was structurally required, but there's two posts in the center. So if we did want to create pens of any kind, we'd have the posts there. Those posts are also handy for hanging water buckets. The shearer, when he puts his equipment up, he's got this sort of like overhead thing he brings with him. He can just attach it to those posts. So there's a lot of good value in having those posts. There's this section of just property. There's a section that was right behind the west wing, just south of the west wing. So the south door would open. And the only time I ever use that south door is if I want to route the rams in there from the pastures to do shearing or, whatever we're going to do, breeding. We use that door for, in and out for setting up breeding groups. But that section, that little patch of land there, it's where Rich used to, when we first started, he would throw manure over that gate as he was cleaning the barn. And then later on, he would come with the tractor and spread it, because we had a lot of empty fields that weren't pasture. You don't spread manure on pasture because it's just loaded with parasites and stuff, and you don't want that where your sheep are going to eat. But then because we started to run out of non-fenced area that you could drive the tractor on to spread the manure, I started selling the manure. The problem was where that pile is in the spring, it's really wet and the tractor would get stuck. And in the spring is when people want the manure for their gardens and trees planting and stuff like that. So I decided to take that whole pile and move it. So now it's on a stone patch. I can get at it. It's up on higher ground. And it just works out a lot better. So I've got like 3 or 4 people that come every spring to pick up a truckload of manure, and it works out great, keeps the pile managed. I use it as well in my vegetable garden and around the property. So we moved that pile for that reason, but then that whole section of land just got overgrown because we just neglected it. It didn't really serve any purpose. We weren't going to put sheep on it because the manure was there. And so it just kind of got neglected. There's too much other stuff to do to try and like get in there and mow it or trim it. And there was also some debris in there, like some building materials from prior builds. It was sort of like the space where you would throw stuff. I mean, it was behind the barn, so I couldn't see it. My kitchen window looks out to the north side, so I don't like having a bunch of junk out north of the barn. But south of the barn, you couldn't see it, so I didn't. Anyways, it just kind of turned into a hot mess. So that's where we decided we would expand the barn because it was kind of like the right dimension for what we needed. And so that was where we decided to put it. Plus that the gating and everything kind of lined up nicely as far as like the lanes, how they were set up and stuff. So that's where we decided to put it. But the first thing we had to do was to clear a lot of that land, or a lot of the topsoil and a lot of the vegetation that was in there, and level it out. So Rich, took the time to do that. And then we brought in a bunch of stone and put that down. So that created a barrier between, all that, between the dirt and where the sheep are going to walk. And it also all that stone is going to provide really good drainage. So it'll stay nice and dry in there So this section here is, well, this was where we foolishly used to just dump our manure when we clean out the barn, just because it was so convenient to dump it out the door. But then we ended up getting this massive pile here, and it was really difficult to get to in the spring. So we moved that manure pile, and that manure pile is now over there, and I can get to it with the tractor in the spring when I need it for both my garden, and I sell manure. So I sell truckloads. I've got 2 or 3 people that come by for it regularly. So anyways, we just finished clearing this. Rich came in with the tractor and flattened it all out. Now we gotta remove all that fencing because the addition is gonna be right up against this lane here. So this lane is actually gonna be gone. And it'll start over there, I think, somehow. I gotta figure that out. And we're probably going to bring in a load of stone and put that down here. So, and that's the door. I got to pull those weeds, and I also have to rip out that shrub. But that's the door from the other side. So this is all going to be barn expansion. And the schedule, so it is November 2022, and the schedule is we're going to have the builders out hopefully by December. If the weather stays temperate like this, that'll really work out great. So I've put my down payment down so they can go out and get the materials, and that's going to be really great. Alright guys, these are my adult rams. There's Jon Snow, the unnamed Morat ram, and Loki. And none of these guys are going to get used this year. We're just going to hold them over. If anybody wants to buy a nice adult ram that's polled with super fine fleeces, give us a call. Water good? I got to fill their water back up. This is just some detritus that came up after clearing that space, were things that we just kind of laid out on the ground. An old tarp that I need to separate from the garbage. And then a couple pieces of this sheet roofing, which is the roofing that we use on the barn. And I have a pile of scrap metal up by the road for scrappers who on occasion will come take whatever I put out there. So I got to take care of this. But there's not a lot of urgency here other than the fact that it's, winter's coming. Cylinder takers. So the next thing we had to do after we decided where we wanted to put it was to find a contractor. So we've used an Amish crew built the center section. A builder out of Holly built the west wing, which was probably the poorest quality job of all of them. It was very leaky. Rich had to redo the roof, and a lot of the joins are kind of sloppy. So really had a bad experience actually with that builder. The east wing, we had another Amish crew, a different crew, because they kind of rotate, I guess. But we're very fortunate that we have a community of Amish people in a town north of us. So there's a mill, there's a metal working place, there's a window guy. So we've got a lot of building contractors really close by to us. So we decided, actually the hay barn was a pole barn manufacturer that builds all over the place, and they did a really good job. We were really happy with that. But for this section, we decided we found an Amish building crew through the millwork that we used for all of our door frames and stuff when we built the house, and they recommended this builder. So we contacted him, and this is a very common thing. I don't know if it's universal for all contractors, but we called and left a message, and 6 days later, the guy calls us back and says, my schedule, this was like back in July, and he said, my schedule is such that I'm not going to be able to get to you guys until the new year. We're like, okay, well, we're not in a real hurry. We just know we want to do it. He called us in September to set up a time to come out and look at the site. And he came out and we talked about what we wanted to do, took notes. He came back to us with a proposal soon after he made, that's not true, I think it was like a month after he visited us, but this is just the way it is. And so I immediately sent him there was like a 3-phase payment, so I sent him the first third immediately to get on the schedule, which we were told not until after the new year. But then in December, we got the call saying, and I think what happened was a lot of the projects fell through because of the economy. Things were kind of slowing down, right, in end of November. So we got the call. He said, I'm going to be out there in 2 days to start the project, start the job. So the next day, a bunch of materials of the first phase of materials got delivered. And then the next day, the crew showed up, which I think it was what was the date? The 12th. So on the 12th of December, the crew showed up. There was 4 of them, 4 or 5. 8 o'clock, and they just got to work. And they worked right through. We took a break for lunch. Usually they would leave around 4, it seemed. I don't know, they kind of slipped away, and all of a sudden you look out and they were gone. We're supposed to be getting delivery of the materials for this barn addition today. It's actually a pretty nice day. It's not windy. I think it's like in the mid-20s. It snowed yesterday, so we got a little dust of snow. And Rich put stone down. Let's spread that out. And also had to take this fence. This is the lane, right, that they would normally come through to get out to the pasture out there. So he took down both sides of he took the one side of the lane down, the other side he had to move it over so they had enough clearance to build and do the work and stuff. Which construction is supposed to start tomorrow. A 20 by 30 addition. It'll match the pitch of that roof, from what I understand. And the plan is we're going to put stalls in this section for storage, for lambing, and for whatever, if we need quarantine pens or breeding pens. Girls are having their breakfast. Today's December 12th, and all this material got delivered for the barn expansion. Posts, concrete. So the building crew is here, and I wanted to get some footage. They are an Amish crew. We've got a large Amish community near us. So this is the first day. I'm going to run out and see if I can maybe try and get footage every 3 or 4 hours just to monitor the progress. So let's go. The generator is used to power their air compressor, which then powers their tools. That generator runs the entire time that they're on the site, except for during their breaks. Every so often I would check in, and there was always something new to see. I'm not going anywhere near those guys, huh? I spoke with the job foreman early on about making sure it was okay for me to video them working. As long as I didn't put their faces in the video, they were okay with it. Here they are digging the post holes. Yeah. The sheep were very uncomfortable with all of the noise and activity, wanted nothing to do with what was going on. I was really impressed with this guy's lifting technique. It's 4. It's great. Permission to video as long as I don't have any faces. Oh, now you're gonna come over. So this is noon the first day. So when the workers went on break, the sheep felt a little more comfortable and I went over to check out what was going on. I really loved it how they just would drop their belts right where they were standing just as soon as the lunch hour hit. Materials, roofing materials now. You can tell just how they're behaving that they're on high alert, since normally they would come up to me for affection. All the girls are in the barn because they were outside all day because they didn't want to go in with those crazy builders, right? It's all right. You guys relax. You had a rough day today. So the materials were getting delivered all day. I think there was at least 3 loads. So this pile kept on changing as the day progressed. Windows. That's right, we got windows too. And I gotta call a gutter guy. I forgot about that as part of this project. What do you guys think? Extremely muddy, squishy.
So yeah. Another thing I was wondering is, it's hard to see that now, but if it closed off a whole side, could this whole thing be a breeding pool?
Sure. Nice breeding
Not
pen.
very wide, but it's
Well, why does
plenty
it?
long.
Yeah. You got options. That's what's nice.
Okay, so we started out the day at 8 o'clock today. And by what I say we, I meant the Amish. So they got the post in, all the holes drilled. I made a slight change of plans. We were going to put some post in between the big posts, and I decided not to do that. So I expected them to get the post in today and set, and then work on the construction tomorrow. But as you can see, they already got started. They got the roof joist in, which
This stuff isn't gonna. These boards here are just temporary, right?
yeah. And they started putting, actually don't know what those are called. Those boards up there. I guess fascia boards. I don't know what they're called.
So there's going to be 4 posts inside. Like when you're inside the barn, there'll be 4 actual pillars as part of the floor of the barn to work around, right?
Yeah, so what we have here is these posts they put in. There's 4 of them from back to front. They're part of the support structure for the roof. And they're on both sides. So there's about 10 feet between them, which is the actual space where sheep would be. And it'll be easier to see once it's done. And then these 4-foot or 5-foot sections on the side, there's a lane of 5 feet here. I don't know exactly what we're going to do with that. We're eventually going to put lamp pens in here. We can put stalls in here, but that's the part we changed up today, so I don't know exactly how we're going to doing that. Probably put side-out panels in here. We could also build a permanent one if we wanted to.
So what doors, where are we going to have access to the outside? Where, do you know? Based on the plan, I think I know. But
Yeah, there will be 8-foot opening in the back, and it'll be split sliding doors just like we had before. And
so are we going to keep it like this, the fencing? Is the fencing going to stay like this and they'll just go that way to the lane? Probably, right? It's going to be really nice.
made better progress than I thought today. They'll have to, because tomorrow is going to be a nice day, and then the rest of the week is going to be garbage. So whatever they get done tomorrow is going to have to hold for a few days with bad weather and rain and snow. So we'll see what happens. They brought enough materials to do the roofing, so that must be the plan. Doesn't look like they brought any siding, so I don't think that's going to happen tomorrow.
There's windows over there.
Yeah, they would have to get the windows and all the framing done tomorrow. I doubt the doors will be done tomorrow for the end, but we'll see what happens there. I'm not exactly sure what they did over here, because the post doesn't go all the way to the top like it's supposed to. But we'll see.
This one here.
Yeah. I don't know what their plan is for that.
Well, that one's really tall, and that one's actually, these two are kind of the same height as this one. The one there behind you.
Yeah.
It'll be really nice.
And that's about it for today.
This is Wednesday morning. roof on there now. Lunch break. On the second day, the weather turned, but in the afternoon it got rainy and really cold, freezing rain, but they kept working right through it. However, I decided it was way too cold and damp to continue to get footage, plus that the fencing guy had just arrived, but that's a topic for another video. We did use different materials for the new addition. We went with the metal siding, and we always had the metal roof, but the siding we went with metal this time. It's just easier to maintain. I think it's a little bit less expensive. It's not as pretty, as the wood, but you can see the wood definitely has to have pretty consistent upkeep and maintenance. And the metal, this expansion that we did is, you can't really see it from the house, so it doesn't look like disjointed or whatever because of the different materials. So that's what we went with. So we didn't have to file a permit, which I thought was interesting, with the town to build the expansion, even though we had to get a permit to build the first section of the barn, which is pretty much the same size. But at any rate, so we didn't need a permit, but we did have the assessor. He had to come out and inspect the post holes. So that's a process. He told us we could send him photographs of it, which we did, but then he was in the neighborhood and he just stopped by just to sort of check out the site and introduce himself and stuff. So that was nice. We got to meet the assessor. So like I said, 2 days, zip, they were in and out, got all the stuff put together. And then we then started, like I said, putting in a little bit more stone to create more of a floor. There's quite a bit of work left to do. We're not even using that section yet. So, it got finished on the 13th of December, and here we are almost mid-February, and we're still, working the final details. It's always that last 20% that takes the longest. But so right now, Rich is ordering electrical supplies. He talked with a electrical inspector and got information about how he's supposed to be doing that. So we got to install outlets, light fixtures. We're not going to put a water hydrant in that section, even though it's going to be a Trek carrying the buckets in there, but that's just a kind of an expense. And so that new section's got 2 windows on either side. It's also got a south-facing sliding door. So now we have another whole section if we need, we could actually just use that to store my handling equipment, or have my handling equipment set up in there, using it when we need it. So we'll have to think about what we want to do. Yesterday we set up the handling equipment. I didn't video it because it was it's a lot to do. So I set up all the equipment and we did all of the used feet, did some deworming, and took fiber samples. It was 5 hours of work. And from doing that, we are definitely at the most sheep we want, because I'm still pretty exhausted from that. And it was just me and Rich. We didn't have anybody helping us. So I think that one thing we should do as we get older is make sure that we're only keeping as many sheep as we can maintain. If we had to run them all through and do stuff on them, we have to be able to do it. So I don't think we're going to get more sheep or keep more lambs or whatever. It's really tempting because I love them so much, but that's why I want to keep it at a good number, because I love them so much. One thing that is nice about this new addition is that it blocks the wind. So in that little corner that we created, where you're coming out of the center section on the south side, the sheep can kind of huddle in that little corner, and it's blocked from the wind. The snow doesn't drift there any longer because we had that big snowstorm and the addition was there and there was no drifting, which I was really surprised because I opened up that south-facing door after the storm, afraid of what I was going to see, because last year we had to snow blow a lane for the lambs or the ewes to get out. and it was just clear. So that was a real, unexpected benefit of the new addition. So yeah, we do get a lot of questions from prospective sheep farmers wanting to know about our accommodations. So I figured I would sit down. I've kind of touched on the barn in a few prior videos, but I really thought I would go through this really thoroughly with you guys and then take advantage of some of the footage I got of the build, because it was really fun to watch the guys putting up the barn and the different steps and stuff. So hopefully you enjoy that footage. Thanks for making it through here to the end. I really appreciate you stopping by, and I hope that you can come back again soon.